this is Cathynan Herbal ABC, and I'm Cathynan. I'm called that because that's what my oldest grandson likes to call me, which is relevant because this series, this ABC that I'm going to be doing, is because I'm putting a book together for a little legacy to my grandchildren. They've all learned a little bit, whether they wanted to or not, about herbs with their nanny, and actually have shown quite a lot of interest, and it's lovely to be able to pass on my little bit of knowledge. And that's what this is also about, is that I have got quite a lot of knowledge put together now, and I don't want it to go nowhere. So yeah, I'm making the book for my grandkids and sticking this out on YouTube, and we'll see what happens to it. Yeah, it's about sharing my love of herbs and my faith in some of the remedies that we'll be talking about. And it's a two-way thing. So please feel free to comment constructive criticism where you think that maybe I've got something wrong, want to talk about it, it's fine. And also any ideas extending our communal knowledge about each herb. And I've chosen this format, quite a simple format, so that I stay on track, because I will veer off all over the place. Quite passionate about my subject, and I can always think of something to say. So what I'm going to do is, it's going to not be, if anything, fast-paced about this whatsoever. The technology, although I'm getting some excellent help elsewhere, my knowledge, I hope, will improve during the series. Yeah, so please don't expect anything too flashy. It's not going to happen. Okay, so the format that I've taken is this. So first, every time I will tell you the herb and its name, and also any Latin names or traditional folk names, whatever that I know of. Especially as some of the folk names tell us 10 times more than the Latin names do. Well, that's not true. I mean, if your knowledge of Latin is there, of course Latin names tell you something, but the folk names tell you something that's really inherent in our history, and it's a lovely way to learn about the herbs, is to learn why they're called what they're called. Then the first thing I'll go into every time after the name is the cautions. So I will say, to start with, if you have anything serious wrong with you, of course consult a professional practitioner. My main philosophy about all these herbs is that if you keep gently looking after yourself every day, then the likelihood of you falling for some of the more serious diseases is lessened. And also, if you do fall, then your recovery time is, I think, quickened, made faster. And the whole process becomes a little bit easier. I've seen my friends drop, and my system is such that I can kind of get anything and it doesn't hit me too hard. I mean, if, you know, I could get berry and die tomorrow, and that would make me sound like a hypocrite. But on a general level, my health is pretty good, especially for my age, and I'm on no pharmaceuticals whatsoever. Okay, I will own up to the odd ibuprofen, and I've had a very rough winter, which I'll tell you more about because it is again relevant because of the herbs that I use to look after myself. And that's what this is all about as well, really, is we can look after ourselves. We don't need to go running to the doctor for everything. We were taught that we should. But now, as most of you realise, these things are letting us down. And also the pharmaceuticals that are used, quite often the side effects are far worse than the original problem. So I've got a million reasons why I respect herbs so much. I'm going to stop now because if I do it too long, the technology doesn't like it. So I'm going to come back in a second. So this is the second part of my general introduction to Cathynan's Herbal ABC. After the cautions, we'll go through the cautions quickly first. So I will go through these cautions at the beginning of every herb that I talk about, primarily just to get it over with, so that we can get on to all the good stuff. And also, if you are in the category of people that this herb wouldn't be particularly good for, you can switch off if you want to. So I'll tell you straight up. I mean, the most sensitive people usually with the herbs are pregnant women, and I will always tell you if it's slightly dangerous for a pregnant women to be using each herb. And apart from that, most of the herbs I use are not dangerous. They will be dangerous to some people just about the same way as almost anything else is. If that's the case, I will tell you. Okay, so then I'll go on to the actions of each herb and their medicinal uses and what they can help prevent and sometimes cure. Quite simple, but it'll take some explaining for each herb. Then we'll go on to preparation, and the preparation that I'm using mainly is the preparations that I use, and because my lifestyle is quite hectic usually, these preparations take no time at all, and they take no great medicinal knowledge. Quite often teas, sometimes an ointment, sometimes a tincture, nothing very complicated. This will change. I've only had my most recent gardens a few years. And as, of course, they grow more mature, I have more herbs to harvest. And so my ambitions on how to use those herbs are going to change. Basically pretty basic preparation. And now the recognition of each herb. So the herbs I'm using are all either easy to grow, easy to find, or very cheap to buy in this country. This was my premise when I first started collating 5 years ago. Started to collate the knowledge I got from the course that I did, which covered everything, Ayurvedic and Chinese, which is all wonderful. And I can certainly chat about that sort of thing. But I wanted this first alphabet anyway to be totally about stuff that you can do yourself and that involve very little money. Mainly because I learned about herbs because I was a single mum of 3 kids, because the doctors was a long way away, because I had become disillusioned completely with the pharmaceutical industry, especially in the face of what the treatments they were trying to give me for my children. And that was when I genned up and started looking at alternatives, as did many, 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 many of us. I certainly wasn't alone. But I've kept at it. And being quite extreme in nature, I wanted to delve into exactly how we could look after ourselves. And I'm kind of spent the rest of my life doing that, really, more or less. So after recognition, which will help you with planting, but also, of course, foraging, we'll go on to how to grow these herbs, most of which I will have some experience of. I've been a gardener quite a lot in my life. And again, most of them are going to be pretty easy to grow because they're largely native plants, because that's my premise in doing this. After that, I go to permaculture. This is a subject that's very dear to my heart, and we will be going into why every plant that we look at is not only good for us, but it's also good for the soil and the environment in general, and the wildlife and the bees and everything. Permaculture is very important to me, and it's going to be an interesting little section of this series, I think. Then I'm going to go into the phytochemicals, and I will stutter and stammer because it's all the science, and I do know this stuff, but it nevertheless trips me up quite a lot. Just so that you know which constituents of each herb is the active constituents that are going to cause an effect. After that, I go to the magic, the folklore of the plants. We have to respect the fact that these plants have been around for a long, long while, and people all over the world have got very similar, actually, stories about each herb. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll go in, at the very end, we'll go in and do a little tarot spread for the influence which each herb. Now, I started learning my herbalism from culpepper, and I would thoroughly recommend anybody who wants to study herbs to look at him. And he was very knowledgeable about the astrology of the herbs, which planet ruled which herb and that sort of thing. So I'll be going into that. And as I say, the tarot. So that's it. So that's what my Cathynan's Herbal ABC is basically going to look like. Good morning. So today's Cathynan's Herbal ABC is O for oak. And the oak in Latin is Quercus robur, which is R-O-B-U-R. And the things that you have to be aware of that we're going to start with, as usual, is the contact with the oak as a fresh plant. The resin, the sawdust or the bark may cause an allergic reaction in some people. And some people may be allergic to herbal remedies, including oak. So if you think you might be, then obviously be careful. Excess of a medicinal remedy for oak also can cause reactions such as vomiting, abdominal pain and digestive issues, as the high tannin level may irritate gastric mucous membranes. But during the preparation, which we'll go into next, you take pains to get rid of most of this tannin, the high tannin content of oak. But yeah, the first sign of abdominal pain or digestive issues, if you're taking oak, then stop. And that's it really for the things that you have to be aware of. So the preparation next, the bark and the galls, which are the abnormal outgrowths that you'll see on oak trees, are used in tanning and dyeing quite a lot. And a dry wine can be made from the young leaves, which are still tender. The recommended dosage for a decoction of oak bark powder is 1/3 to 1/2 a cup daily. So you're only taking really very little. To make the decoction, you can use 4 teaspoons of bark powder to 250 ml of hot water, boiling water. I would multiply this sometimes to have enough for a few days. Especially if you're in a hurry. I mean, if you want to make fresh every day, that's well and good, probably better. But my life is such that I'm, despite being retired, still quite busy. Don't want to be in the kitchen my whole life, much as I love it. So gently simmer this mixture for 20 minutes to complete the decoction. So you put your 1/3 to 1/2, where are we? The 20, I can't find. Oh yeah, here we go. So you put your 4 teaspoons of bark powder per 250 ml of boiling water, which you then, so you put it in the boiling water and then you simmer it for 20 minutes gently. A tincture can be made from acorns, which have to be first dehusked and pulverised, and then added 1 part to 5 parts of 45-degree alcohol, 45% alcohol. Well, in my case, it's usually 40%, if I can get it, if not 37.5% vodka. And I've done a few tinctures like this and it seems to be fine. And this you macerate for 8 days, only 8 days, shaking it daily. Which doesn't seem very long to me, but I haven't seen any evidence either way whether this is a good thing. So it would be an experimental thing, but I'm going to try. It's going to be my next experiment. When it's ready, which you can probably tell by the colour and the taste, filter it, and this might take some time because a tincture that you make with powder takes longer to all filter through. You can imagine it's like sand rather than if you're using just leaves or something, it's quite easily filtered, but with powder it's going to take some time. And then the dosage would be 15 to 30 drops daily, and it can be used externally by diluting it with half the amount of water again. Okay, so we come back with the actions. So this is the actions and benefits of oak. I'm experimenting with this new position, new format, and also I've got a microphone. So if anybody's watched previous ones, please tell me if this is better. And I'm more comfortable here, but we'll see. I might go back to my table, just for a change, hey. So the actions, the tincture can be used externally, as I said, if you dilute it by half again, to clean ulcers and septic or suppurating wounds. Suppurating just means weeping or oozing. Nasty, if it looks nasty, clean it with oak tincture. So it's astringent, which means it contracts the skin cells and other tissues. It's a styptic, which means it stops bleeding, and an antiseptic. So I guess it would be quite good to clean your bleeding wound, as well as a weeping or oozing, suppurating or septic wound. A wound that was still bleeding would also benefit from an oak tincture. So it's antiseptic. It's anti-inflammatory and hemostatic. That again means it stops bleeding. Interestingly, it's been used as a treatment for alcoholism. I guess the decoction, the tea, would be better than the tincture, which is made with alcohol. Might be tempted to drink the whole bottle of tincture in one go. But yes, I would guess the decoction would be the way to go with alcoholism. Helpful for diarrhea. And when I say alcoholism, sorry, it could just be you're trying to give up drinking. Doesn't mean you were necessarily an alcoholic to start with. It just means, that oak will help you to give up drinking. It's also helpful for diarrhea, dysentery and colitis. It's also great if you have mouth ulcers, spongy gums, sore throat or tonsillitis. It's also effective for leukorrhea, aka vaginal discharge. A decoction of the diluted tincture is helpful for chilblains or piles, and a simple decoction would also help, but be perhaps not quite so effective on your chilblains or piles. Okay, so that's the actions, very short and sweet, and we'll come back with the recognise, forage and grow. Okay, so now we're going on to recognise, forage and grow. The oak's a large deciduous tree with a very broad crown, and it will take 20 to 50 years to reach its ultimate size, which can be over 20 to 40 metres high. That's 65 to 130 feet high, with a spread of 8 metres, 48 feet. They've got a really big spread. The leaves have shallow, rounded lobes and turn reddish brown in the autumn. There are inconspicuous yellow-green catkins growing among the young leaves, if you look, in the spring. The leaves appear in bunches and have very little stem. The oak bark is grey and becomes deeply ridged with age. In autumn, the cupped seeds, the acorns, appear. The best acorns to forage are those that have turned a deep brown and have already fallen to the ground. Don't take any that are green or damaged. Quite often, if they're damaged, it's ants. You're not going to be very nice. Tannins vary greatly with different species of oaks, so be aware of different levels of bitterness. All acorns are quite bitter, but they can be roasted to make coffee or flour. It's quite a long process. You shell the acorns with a nutcracker or pliers and put them in cold water. You may have to use a little knife to prise the nuts out. Make sure to remove every scrap of shell because the tannins are particularly strong in the shell. So then you soak it in cold water for at least 12 hours. Then you drain it, and then you soak till the water runs clear. Then you soak them for another 12 hours and keep repeating the process for 4 to 7 days. So it's quite a long process. I'm doing some kelp at the moment. So I've picked my own kelp off the beach, following my own advice. And I have done it before. but I'm going to see how long that takes to wash the salt out, but I think it would just be overnight, really. I'm going to have a look at it in a minute. I've done it overnight. But this you have to do 4 to 7 days, even with the least bitter of the acorns. And then give them a long soak after the 4 to 7 days. Give them a long soak until the water looks clear. Then drain the acorns and taste one to check it for bitterness. If it's fairly bland, they're ready to roast. Use a flat roasting tray with parchment paper and place it, or a silicone tray, and place in a warm oven. So that's 160 degrees Fahrenheit to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, or 71 centigrade to 80 centigrade. Put a wooden spoon or similar in the door to prevent it shutting, to allow the moisture to escape. Otherwise they won't dry properly. Check after 15 minutes and shake them around, and repeat this until 3 hours or more when they're dry. You can also do this with a dehydrator. You can season them and treat them like nuts, or you can grind them into flour and store in a dark place. Or you could do the whole rinsing process using boiling water, which takes only 1 to 2 hours, but the result is not as good. The other main things you can forage from the oak tree are the bolete mushroom and the beefsteak mushroom. To grow it, the oak falls into the H6 zone. H6 plants survive in temperatures as low as -20 to -15 degrees centigrade, or -4 to 5 Fahrenheit. And they're hardy enough to survive a very cold winter. The oak is hardy throughout the UK and Northern Europe, but not if grown in containers. Then you might have to protect them. Oaks like full sun or part shade and moist but well-drained soils. Oaks are huge but take 20 to 50 years to reach their ultimate age. They need deep fertile soil and are lime tolerant. Now, I met a man in a park. I met him quite regularly in a park he was the gardener in a park in Newcastle, and he bonsaied everything. And I asked him how he did it, expecting this long Mr. Miyagi type explanation. And he said, I bung them in a pot, and then in 10 years, I take them out of the pot, and if the either shave the roots, or put them in a bigger pot. So you can actually keep an oak tree going for quite a long while. I mean, they do like this deep fertile soil, so I'm not entirely sure whether that would work with oak. And it is a little bit more than that. Obviously, it's a little bit more than that to bonsai well. For example, you take any branches that are crossing over any other branches and that sort of thing. Then if you want to get artistic with it, it's very much more work. But for basic, if you want the leaves and the bark from trees, I'd be interested to see. I've yet to grow my own oak, but he had some in pots. So I kind of believe my own eyes. And he seemed to be doing quite well with these things. So, yeah, certainly tell me if that's all wrong, but it seems like a really good way for those of us who can't, we haven't got... I haven't got an estate, I haven't even got a big garden. So, you can't grow many trees. But this way, maybe, at least you can keep a tree for a few years to use for your bark and your leaves. Okay, coming back with the permaculture. So the permaculture of oak. So all trees are of course precious from a permaculture perspective. They provide wood for heating and cooking. The larger branches and trunk are used for timber, and the smaller branches can be used for trellises, stakes, mushroom logs, carpentry, crafts, Herbal and biochar, which I will explain. So a Herbal it's spelled H-U with the umlaut, you know, in German, Hegelkultur. It's a German word which literally means mound bed or mound culture. And it's a technique where a mound is constructed from decaying wood debris over which other compostable plant materials are then planted. Are layered. So I made one. So at the bottom I put logs, then sticks, then any garden waste, you know, stems and bits of this and that. And then on the top of that, my household compost. I then covered it with topsoil, and it's been there, I think, 3 or 4 years maybe, and I'm just now beginning to plant it up. I mean, I planted it with this and that just to keep it covered, because if you've been watching my videos, you'll know that one of the permaculture principles is that, you know, that nature abhors not only a vacuum but bare soil. Well, nature doesn't abhor it, we do, because if you leave the soil vacant, it depletes the nutrients. When it rains, the nutrients will leach out, and also you get the colonizers, which people think of as weeds. Again, if you watch particularly my video about dandelion, these plants are actually precious, and I would never pull a dandelion unless I wanted to eat the roots, because they give the soil a lot of things, particularly nitrogen, that they need. So so then when you've got this Herbal, you can then plant it as a raised bed. So I've got broad beans. I planted broad beans at the beginning, in the end of autumn, and hopefully in the spring they'll be popping up and giving me some lovely broad beans. But it's the first time I've planted it really. I'm going to do a lot more planting in the spring. Okay, so this improves the fertility of the soil and the water retention, and also warms the soil, benefiting any plants that are grown on or around the Herbal. Biochar is the other thing I mentioned, and it's charcoal basically, and it's intended for organic use. It's mainly used to increase soil aeration, to reduce soil emissions of greenhouse gases, and to stop nutrients leaching out of the soil, reducing soil acidity, and to increase the water content of the soil. Biochar is also used in slash and char farming for water retention, and as animal fodder as an additive. There's also a possibility that biochar can be used to mitigate climate change because of its ability to sequester carbon, sometimes for thousands of years. This is lovely and makes me think that biochar is a way of giving back to the earth some of what's been taken through our need for fossil fuels in former years. So actually returning biochar to the soil is redressing some of this problem that we have with the use of fossil fuels. To make your own biochar, one way is as follows. You collect the biomass, your wood, leaves, etc., to make a fire in a hole in the ground. Pile the biomass on top of the fire, feed in more till it burns hot, cover with soil to cut off the oxygen, and wait for the fire to go out, maybe overnight. Open it and get the biochar, which will look like charcoal. You can also do this just by putting the biomass, your bits of wood, in a tin with a few holes in, and either putting that in a fire or, bonfire and letting it do its thing, go out naturally. Or you can put it in your wood burner indoors. I know the people at Sinofin Farm, where I did my permaculture course, had a tin that they put their wood in. Every time they lit a fire, they'd put a little bit of wood, and because that all builds up and you've got this lovely biochar to use. If you ever come across the word pyrolysis, that's just the name they give to the burning of the wood to make the biochar. Okay. Again, most trees offer habitat to wildlife, but the oak can be home to predator birds, such as owls and hawks, as well as smaller birds, mammals and insects. Mammals and birds eat the acorns, and the leaf litter attracts fungi and beetles. Oak supports 108 kinds of fungi. 57 are entirely dependent on oak. The relationship is symbiotic, and the oak benefits as much as the fungi. Other important qualities of the oak from a permaculture perspective are evapotranspiration, which is the combined process of water being transferred to the atmosphere from the Earth's surface. The huge oak tree can provide a sound or a privacy barrier. It's a soil improver. It's erosion control, and above all, it's beautiful. Some of the wildlife in an oak tree. The mature oak hosts the most species of any tree. Squirrels, caterpillars of the purple hair streak butterfly, and the underwing moth, the oak mining bee, badgers, deer, wild boar, wood mouse, jays, wood warblers, blue tits, great tits, Beckstein's bat, and a barbastelle bat, and a pied flycatcher, and a tree creeper, and a goat moth larvae, cobweb beetles, brown tree ants, blue ground beetles, oak bracket fungi, oak moss lichen, and 12 lichens that are all very rare and all depend on oak alone. That's how important the oak is. And dilated scalewort, which I think is a lichen as well. So loads of different species. Going to come back next with the phytochemicals. So the phytochemicals of oak, so tannins, as we've said, the most significant constituent of oak, and make up to 20% of the active compounds in the bark. There are also polyphenolic compounds, including grandin, elagitannins, e.g. gallic acid, elagic acid, vescalagin, and castellagin. Oak also contains flavonoid glycosides, including rutin and quercetin, and proanthocyanidins. Although we've looked at the lengths we have to go to rid acorns of all the tannins because of their bitterness, when we use oak medicinally, it's partly because of the beneficial properties of tannins, which include improved cardiovascular health, and reduced risk of heart disease, anti-inflammatory effects, digestive and antimicrobial effects that improve gut health, anti-carcinogenic and anti-mutagenic properties, and antioxidants, which will prevent cancer and tumours. Flavonoid glycosides are plant compounds which can't be absorbed in their original form, have to be metabolized by intestinal microbial enzymes. Rutin is a flavonoid glycoside which has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. It's helpful for blood circulation, blood clots, cholesterol and arthritis. Quercetin is also a flavonoid glycoside. It too is antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. Quercetin helps to reduce swelling, kills cancer cells, controls blood sugar and prevents heart disease. Okay, coming back with the plant magic. Well, as usual, this is my favourite part. So the plant magic, the honestly magnificent oak tree is not only magic, but majestic, and its ruler is Jupiter. I'm reading my own notes here. If you haven't watched before, this is all going towards making a book, and you'll see the text before. That's why you see the text before each section. And we're over halfway there, so it's looking doable. Okay, so its ruler is Jupiter, which befits this majesty, as Jupiter, like Zeus, Jupiter and Zeus are the Roman and Greek words for the King of Kings, the God of Gods. Jupiter and the oak both speak of truth, courage, wisdom, stability and resilience, as well as energy, strength and power. Indigenous Americans associate the oak with councils and elders and with warriors. The oak has been used in many cultures to direct and channel high energy and contains the magic properties of earth and water. You can brew a tea of oak leaves and add it to a bath to remove jinxes or curses. Oak can be burnt with mistletoe for a similar result by smoking it around oneself or around the house or workplace. When I say smoking it, I mean getting some twigs and lighting them and putting them around you, around your own body and your house. And if you're going to do that, we call it smudging. When we do it with sage, I don't know whether the same word applies to oak, but when you are smudging, it's important to open a door so that all the bad spirits and bad vibrations you're trying to get rid of have got somewhere to go. Otherwise, they'll just be floating around in confusion and not leave. People swear by this, and also I don't know if you're aware, but smudging sage, for instance, actually kills a lot of germs, a lot of bacteria in the house, and it gets rid of the staleness that you can sometimes feel, especially in the winter months when we're indoors so much of the time, and these perhaps not so intelligently constructed four-walled houses. I would far rather live in a round house, I think. But the energy tends to get stuck in the corners. This makes sense if you think about it. And that awful stagnant feeling that you get by the end of winter through being indoors too long, you can mitigate a little bit by doing a bit of smudging and a bit of burning different things. I've got lavender smudge sticks at the moment just because I've got a glut of lavender. So it doesn't have to be an expensive hobby, all this stuff. You know, I don't buy magical stuff. I don't use anything much that I have to buy. If I can help it, naturally stingy. So where were we? Once out of the workplace. Yeah, so this smoking will remove unsettled vibrations. This is a druid remedy, and the oak was certainly regarded by the druids as a plant of huge power. In fact, the very word druid is thought to mean knowledge of the oak. Darach is a Celtic word meaning both oak and tree of life. The oak has a power that may be able to resist poison from snakes and poisonous plants. The Bach flower remedies, I've been assured that it is Bach and not Bach. I always want to say Bach like the musician. But Bach flower remedies include oak, which is for those who struggle and never give up, but also never succeed. You know, that strong person that keeps going and keeps going and keeps going but never quite makes it, whose integrity is compromised by long-term adversity. So the oak is deciduous but holds its leaves long into winter, which is one reason it's associated with tenacity and longevity. The acorn has long been a symbol of vitality in life. Some cultures, such as Indo-Europeans, connect the oak to the weather, particularly thunder. This is reflected also in the Norse culture of the early Middle Ages, who connected the oak to Thor, the god of thunder. This may have been because the oak famously survives storms while other trees die. Zeus and Jupiter are both also connected to thunder. Richard Mabey, in his delightful book, The Cabaret of Plants, which I will include in the comments, because it's a beautiful book. And I recently heard him talk, and it was wonderful to hear him talk. Clever man. I still have got somewhere his Food for Free book, which was every hippie's handbook at one point. We foraging has resurfaced as a popular hobby, but it certainly was in the 70s, also very popular amongst those who knew, and I, amongst loads of us, had the Food for Free book. It's a wonderful book. I would thoroughly recommend it. So in The Cabaret of Plants, Richard Mabey's book, he talks about oak's relationship with the green man, who is depicted surrounded by oak leaves. The green man has been around for at least 1,000 years and may have come from the Celtic Cernunnos. Maybe tells us the green man can be benign or devilish, symbolising death and new life, or the unity of people with nature. 4th and 5th century Christians tended to see the green man as ugly and fierce, their beliefs wanting to dissociate with the natural or devilish side of people. Natural was almost a dirty word, when people were trying to get away from that and trying to make out that people were something other and above nature. So we've come pretty much full circle. By the time of the Renaissance in the 15th and 16th centuries, the green man had taken on a far softer and more benevolent character. And you'll see him everywhere, in churches and cathedrals, all sorts of places. The tarot, I haven't found the oak mentioned among herbal tarot readers. However, it is mentioned in the Green Witch's Oracle deck, which I will show you in the tarot section coming next. Okay, so for today's tarot, I'm going to read you to start with out of the book that goes with this Oracle deck, the Green Witch's Oracle deck, by Aaron Murphy Hiscock and illustrated by Sarah Richard. And she says, so the oak tree, power, courage and strength. The oak tree is a popular symbol of strength. The wood is dense and durable, reliable and long-lasting. This tree symbolises power and bravery, telling you that you can stand up to whatever storm is on the horizon. The mighty oak begins as a tiny acorn. It's reassuring to know that something so immense and strong started out as something that you can hold between two fingers. Not only does it remind us that small things can yield huge results, it also reminds us that growing takes time. Rapid growth uses energy to reach a goal quickly. Slow growth uses energy to ensure stable, strong development. The oak tree card urges you to be brave and to stand tall. And here's the card, which I'm going to lay down for us to think about while we're pondering on the oak tree. Rather nice illustration of the acorn and the oak there. And remember, we've learned that the oak is ruled by Jupiter, which is the god of gods, really. And also has a lot to do with thunder being the only tree that survives the thunderstorms. So we're looking at the oak. And I have previously shuffled, so I'm just going to give them... and we're using the Santa Muerte cards, these ones, Book of the Dead. Just trying to find the author of this. Los Scarabeo is the, it doesn't say, it didn't actually give us an author, and the book is quite generic as well. Let's have a look. Ah, yeah, here we go. Fabio Listrani, and published by Lo Scarabeo. I'll just show you it. Or Los Carabeo, Los Carabeo, I guess it would be. Oh, well, no, because they've written it there, like that, Lo Scarabeo, whichever they mean, you can see it written down, so you'll be able to order it. Lovely little deck, and I'm not doing any reverses with this deck because their book doesn't talk about reverses, so, and that's usually the way I play it. It is how the author meant it. So just make my 3 piles. And then anything now that comes out, please tell us more about the oak. This majestic and magical tree that's so ubiquitous in England. I think that's the right word. Never used the ubiquitous word in context before myself. I think that's the word. Totally identified as a card of England, a tree of England, I should say. Doesn't seem to want to do it. It's not really giving us anything. I'm tempted to use my runes that I've made, but because they also are very indigenous way of divination. Oh, I think we've got a couple there. Let's see. 13. I got this one. And the moon. If I can get it, yeah. So 13 is Santa Muerte, and I'll see what the book says about that. She's not really a feature of tarot unless they've taken over a Santa Muerte. Trying to find it in English. Santa Muerte. Accept the coming changes. Do not fear letting go. So it's about being brave and accepting what comes, standing like the oak tree, maybe in the storm, just accepting all the thunder and the rain and the wind, and not letting go of his place or her place in the forest. And the moon is usually about the unknown. Let's see what this. Fret not the unknown. So again, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Be strong like the oak tree. Don't be afraid of the unknown. I'm going to do a quick animal spirit. See if there's an animal spirit that would suit this wonderful, medicinal, magical, majestic tree. Is there an animal you can give us? Let's just divide them up. And again, we don't really talk about reversals with these animal spirits. They just are what they are. There might be one wants to jump out for the oak. Nearly, but not quite. Let's see. Now I'm going to try 3 more. If we don't get any, I'm going to call it a day. 2 and 3. Yeah, no, they don't want to give us any more. And anyway, I think we've spoken so much about the oak and its properties, its magical properties. So yeah, I'll leave you with that. And next week it will be P for pumpkin. Okay, bye.